Family Chats. I'm your host, Maureen, and tonight we're joined with Amanda.
Hello.
Josh.
Hey.
Eve.
Hey.
And Bethany.
Hi.
And tonight we are talking Gilmore Girls, and we are last time we did Gilmore Girls, we did a top 10. This day, I was going to say this year, but that wouldn't really work. Today we are going over the women who have started it all. We're going over Lorelai and Rory. Just then, we're going to talk about their relationship from season 1 all the way to the horrible, dreaded A Year in the Life, to the very last 4 words.
Terrible.
I'm the only one who feels that way, or no?
No, A Year in the Life was
bad.
awful.
Yeah.
All 4 seasons were just awful, the whole thing.
No, it had some good parts. I mean, it had some good parts. I mean, the Life of
liked it.
Brigade, I mean, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I mean, I thought that was great. I mean, but yeah, the way it just kind of stopped.
There were pieces that were okay, but I felt like they completely changed Lorelai and Rory's characters, and they made them completely unlikable.
Everyone's characters.
Yeah, well, everybody
No
kind
one
of
was
changed, but time had gone by too, so you know.
Right.
That's a huge jump.
Hey, I'll put it this way. I am not a Logan fan, like at all, like period. Like I don't like him. I'm sorry. I know I'm getting booted off this.
How dare you?
Now.
Don't you
fire
that?
But I love Finn, Colin, Rob. It was just the whole 9 yards. That was great. I mean, I love that. That was just so Life and Death Brigade. It was, I don't know.
See, now, if you take that scene and you pull it out, I love it.
And I
love it in a musical, not in Gilmore Girls.
Yeah. And I've heard people say the opposite things too. I mean, the opposite to that also to say, oh, it would have been great. It would have been very Gilmore Girls if it wasn't for that scene. I'm like, I don't know.
No, it wouldn't have. None of it was Gilmore Girls. It was the Paladinos trying to see how much they could shove into a Netflix show that they couldn't do in a.
What it was Gilmore Girls meets the Marvelous Miss Maisel. You know?
That's right. Yeah, you had said that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk Lorelai and Rory. So when we first see them, I think the first episode they get into their first huge fight. So it's nice that we see that in comparison to, because if you binge watch Gilmore Girls, no matter this is just my opinion. My opinions are usually factual and right. But I think if you are a true Gilmore Girls fan, no matter how you feel about A Year in the Life, when you binge watch it, you watch it from season 1 all the way to the end of A Year in the Life. I hate doing it, but I have to do it every time because it's Gilmore Girls and it's the Paladinos, and I love both of those things. Mm-hmm. So it's fun and nice to see their very first episode where I think even Lorelai is a little bit naive and she's a little almost unprepared, which is weird because she's 32 at that point. But then you go to the end where you just see them full circle. Obviously, that's the point. It's a full circle for the last 4 words. But them personally, it was just nice to see them come that way and to see their growth through the seasons. And it's just a fun contrast to see.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of growth and everything. And I think that's also why A Year in the Life is so different. Even though they were such different characters, we got to remember there was a big time jump. Mm-hmm. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that the Paladinos didn't get to do season 7 the way they wanted to, we probably would have seen a lot of A Year in the Life.
Yeah.
You know, back then, and there wouldn't have been such a gap and such a change in the characters. You know, they would have been a little bit more who we know and love. But
yeah,
you know.
We would have seen that organic time pass organically versus, being jarring. It was one way, and then suddenly a decade passes. Well, obviously things are going to change. People are going to change. And their surroundings are going to change. But I really enjoyed A Year in the Life. I was glad to be able to see what the Paladinos wanted in that next season to actually take place and happen. So I was just really excited to see that, hey, now this is canon. This is part of the storyline. These things took place, and to know that that's what they were originally have done made it feel like, okay, good. They were able to get it out. It exists now, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the contrast even before A Year in the Life, from the characters we saw in episode 1 to then was still such a huge, but we got to see that evolution.
Exactly.
To feel it, Whereas A Year in the Life, not so much, but
Mm-hmm. And I think too, in season 7, and I know the Paladinos didn't write season 7, so people don't come at me. I understand that. There's a lot of you who don't think season 7 is a valid season to watch because the Paladinos weren't a part of it.
It's still
but the fact is, it's Gilmore Girls. The fact is, it ran as regular syndication, and it is part of it whether you like it or not. So I didn't mean that to sound so reprimanding, but there it is.
Yes, ma'am.
But they gave a little glimpse of Rory being who she was in A Year in the Life when she started to have that meltdown and she wasn't getting accepted into anything and she was starting to freak out. But they ended it with, she got a job. She got a job on the campaign trail for a presidential election, which is kind of a big deal. And you would think that there was more about the article she wrote, the time she spent, because if you're on the campaign trail, unless you get fired, I mean, she took it in June. The election's in November. Typically, you're there for that entire time from June to November, but oftentimes you're also part of the press junket afterwards when you go into the press room. So the fact that she went from that to completely having lost all capability to do that work, I mean, if they would have stuck with that in season 7 when she had the meltdown, I think that would have felt more natural. But because we went from that to she recovered like she always does, got this good job, even though it wasn't paying well, it was still a good foot in the door. But then she lost all of it in A Year in the Life. So that was I think that was the struggle for me. And Lorelai too, in A Year in the Life, she, like, we could see in especially the last couple seasons, even season 6, when Rory left home to go be with her grandparents, and Lorelai's like, tough love, baby. You know, this is it. You have to do this. We don't see any of that in A Year in the Life. And that was season 6 Paladinos that wrote that of Lorelai. But in season 7, it's just kind of like, oh, you're floundering? Okay. Oh, you have no underwear? Okay. Like, it's just, even she, and I get that they're older. I get there's a time jump. I get there's a lot of stuff that happened, but it just felt like they wrote 2 different characters. Maybe that is what they wanted to have happen in season 7, but because if you go from the end of the Paladinos writing in season 6 to A Year in the Life, and you even skip season 7, it doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
Because they're so starkly different.
Yeah. I see that.
No, I have to agree with that too.
What
I know.
What I did notice on some parts as well, and I didn't even notice that I was noticing it, but there were certain scenes where I thought had occurred, like, during, the original series. And then I stopped and thought about it. I said, wait a minute, that actually happened in A Year in the Life. And then vice versa. And that's when I stopped and I thought, wait a minute, if I actually got it confused, then that kind of helps as far as like, okay, yeah, it does kind of connect. It is part of it, because, okay, the Paladinos are truly behind this, because I was thinking, oh, that happened probably like in season 3. No. That was in one of the Year in the Life episodes. And then that's when I realized, okay, it really is coherent with the other seasons if I'm already mushing it in my brain, if that makes sense, So I think that's when I kind of was like, wow, this truly is just an extension, as different as it was and how much time had passed. To me, that was like confirmation that, what, this is all coming from the same source. All of these stories, it's part of it, it's part of the series.
I think a true Gilmore fan kind of overlooks all the inconsistencies that, you were talking about, Marie,
He's probably not a true Gilmore fan.
No, I said, no, I'll say we overlook.
Josh is in trouble.
Oh man, I guess I really am getting kicked off this.
It sounds like it was a joke, but it's
I
real.
don't like Logan, and I said something wrong. No, I just meant that while you see them, you still accept it. It's kind of one of those things where,
Well, we got petals of pig from it, so I mean, that's all that matters.
And like Kirk was the exact same character as he was in the regular series.
Right.
Oh, Kirk is the exact same character in everything he's in. I mean, he's the same guy in Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's
So,
true.
He just plays himself.
Yeah, exactly. He just shows up. He reads the lines.
So let's talk about how Lorelai was with Rory with her guys.
Oh boy.
Right, because we see that right away in the first episode, right? When Rory's like, well, I don't want to go to Chilton anymore. And that is the first time because obviously it's the first time we see it because it's the very first episode, but you got the impression when you first watched it that they have this honed routine. They're this perfect mother-daughter couple. They've never fought. They always get along. They're best friends. But then she inserts that mom card really fast. And for me, I don't know why it surprised me, because even though it's the first episode, it still surprised me a little bit. And it felt like it surprised Rory too, that's what she chose, the hill that she chose to die on was that. And I mean, we're all glad she did, obviously. But I think that we can see Lorelai, as much as she doesn't want to be like her mom,
Right.
She's a lot like her mother when it comes to Rory's guys.
Well, I look at it like it's full circle because Lorelai seeing Rory be like Lorelai, and Lorelai seeing herself like her mom. So it's just this full circle. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, that's why I say it's like she throws down the mom card because she sees herself and Rory, and then at the same time it's like, oops, that was, totally a Emily kind of move. I think that full circle is there throughout the whole series.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, even like when you get to Jess, who everyone knows I'm not a Jess fan until
Don't worry.
later on, and then I think he's too good for Rory. In A Year in the Life, he's certainly way too good for Rory. Like,
Well, when I
put together, he's
A
too
Year in the Life
collected,
was-
he's too macho in a good way, not a bad way. He's too good for Rory in A Year in the Life.
And
Yeah,
also, when I saw him in A Year in the Life, all I could see was Jack Pearson anyway. So I was like, no,
true.
he's not supposed to be there. Save him for Rebecca.
We were calling him Jess Petrelli for like the first,
Exactly.
2
Is that from
seasons
Heroes?
after he made his first attempt. Yeah,
Oh,
from
that's how-
Heroes.
Yes, yeah.
After his first appearance, we're like, hey, look, there's Jess Petrelli.
Well, we all know that Lorelai fought Jess for a long time. And it was because in there she could see, I think with Dean, she was, Lorelai did see, she's going to throw it all away for a guy. And
Yeah.
Lorelai did compare Rory to her, but that was inaccurate because Rory has never been like Lorelai in that way. I think that's how Lorelai saw it. But with Dean, she eventually came to love him because he was responsible, because he was, I think it was almost like she was looking for him to be like husband material. But when it came to Jess, she bucked so many things about him. And there's that dinner when they were at the Gilmores, and Emily's sitting there going, you are doing the right thing. You've got to put your foot down. You can't let her see this boy. And then Lorelai goes in the back room where Rory's hiding. Like, so I realized I can't put my foot down. I have to let you see this guy. It says all that. So I think that, and I like that contrast that Emily is Lorelai's compass for doing right or wrong.
Yeah.
But when it comes to her daughter, she mothers just like Emily did.
Yeah.
To the point where she wants that friendship with her daughter so bad that she clings to her a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Especially before she graduated high school, for sure. And that comes right off the bat in the first episode when she goes to hang out with her grandpa. And then Lorelai tells her that she stretches her shirts out because her boobs are way bigger than hers. That's clearly, she has to have. So where Emily was distant, Lorelai used her mother as a compass so much that she had to pull Rory so close.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
I agree. And I think that kind of goes back because it's kind of like both sides to that, where they're seeing each other in themselves,
Yeah.
but at the same time making conscious actions to not, and in
Mhm.
doing so are doing the very thing that they don't. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like they're like trying to mix oil and water, at the same time, but they're seeing each other in themselves, and it's just kind of one of those things where the pushback is really kind of not
Yeah.
not what you want, not what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think exactly. And they do that on purpose, even in the episode when they're all at the Independence Inn, when they have to, it's the Christmas episode, and they were going to have to cancel that party that was coming in because they got snowed out.
Yep.
And then all of that. So they invite the whole town over. And of course, Emily's like staying in the same room with Rory and Lorelai. And they're in different parts of the room, and they're doing their like face, nighttime face routine.
Oh, yeah.
And then Rory's just sitting there watching them like, behold my future.
I love this scene.
I think that's just like, it was such a perfect moment because you have those themes throughout the whole series, but here was one moment where they just did it so literal to be like, hey, yeah, this is what we're talking about. And Rory is just sitting there seeing it, knowing that, hey, she's just going to be the next link in that chain of Gilmore women. So it's pretty funny to see that,
Yeah. And I think too, the fact that Rory's able to pick up on that with her mom, that she actually, and I think because you can see that in the wedding scene, not the wedding where the day she runs, that drag club, and her mother's talking about how she wanted to try on her wedding dress every night, and that was how she knew that she was with the one. And then Lorelai has her meltdown and says, "Pack, let's go." Mom, why? And she says, because I didn't want to try on my wedding dress every night.
Mm.
And Rory didn't even question it. She's like, all right, let's go do this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the fact that Rory understood, I think, a little more than Lorelai. I mean, obviously Lorelai's figuring it out right then,
Sure.
but I
Right.
think Rory understood her mom even better than Lorelai understood herself, in that way that she was actually so much like Emily, that so
Right.
much of who she is comes from Emily. And I think
Right.
maybe in the Year in Life is the first time that Lorelai starts to accept that a little bit, because she fought that the entire 7 seasons. But Rory understood, okay, you're like your mom, and I've got to kind of treat you this way.
Right. She could
Yeah.
see it. Absolutely. And then for them to like make peace with that, I think that was really cool about A Year in the Life, that there was resolution that took place, she got to make peace with Emily and peace with herself, and and then in turn, make peace with Rory, because I was at the point when they were at odds. And so it was cool to see that resolution, to realize that, hey, it's not a bad thing to accept the good aspects of each other. Like, we keep trying to like not be like you, but maybe I'm approaching this all wrong, so to have that realization, to have that new perspective, to see them have that new perspective of their own relationships, that was cool that we got that.
Absolutely. And I think too, when she started going to Chilton, we saw Lorelai sort of being forced to grow up. It was because I think when she first became a mom, she was young. She was 16, so she has a very valid reason for this. But until Rory started going to Chilton, she never really had to mature, really. She never really had, I mean, yes, she had a job, she was providing a home, she was doing that stuff, but you can still be a high functioning adult and still not have the maturity level that you need to be truly functional in a relationship. And I think that's a running theme throughout Lorelai with her men, that, she has a heart, she comes with baggage.
Yeah.
But with Rory, I think that Rory going to Chilton had forced Lorelai to grow up a little bit. And I think that was her going there, her choosing this life that Lorelai ran away from. I think it sort of made Lorelai reevaluate things. And I think it made her start to see things in the way they should have been seen. That yes, Rory she is me through and through, but she is also my parents.
Yeah.
And I think that was a nice way to see Rory pull them together. Even when
Right.
Lorelai gave her birthday money back to her mom, and her mom unjustly freaked out about getting the money back. And Rory was like, but why did you have to do that? Couldn't you have just kept it? Couldn't you just never paid them back? So Rory serves as this, she sees so deeply into Lorelai, and she sees so deeply into her grandparents, because I think Rory has a better understanding that she is equal parts both of these people.
Yep.
And I think that it takes Rory to make Lorelai understand that she is a lot of her mother in that way.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely can see that. And like you said too, I think when she started going to Chilton, she definitely had to kind of mature. And I think a lot of times in life, I think that happens with a lot of us, when we have major things, major life changes, even good life changes, we tend to kind of get stuck in that mentality when that happens. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, even good stuff, you know what I mean? And you go forward, and it's not until the next big life change, like her going to school, that you start progressing on again, and it's just like, it's funny as people, we do that, and it was cool it's cool to see that on screen.
I think that's what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, Beth.
I think that's what John Cabrera was talking about, that these characters can be larger than life, but yet at the same time, they deal with a lot of situations and problems and issues that just regular everyday people have. It's just displayed, it's packaged in a fun, quirky way, but it's things that people can really face, a situation that forces you to mature, forces you to grow up, or just as you mature, to realize that, hey, the perspective I had on one thing is maybe not quite real or true, and just to see that how they as people morph and grow and evolve, yet it's something that I think any viewer could relate to, but yet it's done in such a fun, quirky way,
Yeah,
it's what he was saying.
I agree with that. What do you think, Eve?
I don't know. It's just funny because the whole show is pretty much built on, mother-daughter who are best friends. But then as the show goes on, it's just so much more complicated than that. Like, it's not just mother and daughter who are best friends. Like, yes, they are, but then there are also layers
Absolutely.
to their relationship where, and it kind of shows that, you know, mother and daughter can never truly be best friends because there's always, you know, there's always that little piece in Lorelai, like the Emily in her head.
That Emily voice speaking to her.
I firmly believe she has one of those.
Emily can live in my head all she wants. I mean, she had really great things to say.
She did, especially to Shira.
Ooh, yes.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
that is one of my favorite scenes.
I know. I love that too.
Yes.
Everybody's.
Number one Emily scene.
Yes.
But I like the episode where Lorelai wears her hair up and her mom's like, I like your hair like that. And then she just realizes, oh wait, I hate this. And then she takes out every single Pop-Tart in the house. And Rory comes out,
Yep.
what are you doing? I don't know if I like Pop-Tarts. So you ate them all?
And then she just took it from her. I like Pop-Tarts.
Exactly.
And I like that creative play or the role reversal between them. Even with Max Medina, Rory is the adult in that scenario. Rory and Max. Lorelai is still very childish. And even with that scene with the Pop-Tarts, Rory is the adult in that. Rory is very often the voice of reason. So Lorelai never really had to mature or grow up either.
Yeah.
Because she had her mother and her father who were constantly controlling her. She got out of there as soon as she could. Then she became a mother and she had to begin to raise them. But even when she first lived at the inn, Mia helped to raise Rory.
Yep.
And I think that we forget that sometimes, that it wasn't like, oh, Lorelai has done it all on her own. And yes, she has. It's a hard job to be a single mother, especially at 16. I am not discrediting that, but she wasn't all alone. She had Mia there the whole time she was at the inn. And that's seen by the very, very close relationship between Mia and Rory.
Yeah.
Not just Mia and Lorelai that have the close relationship. It's also Rory and Mia. So you can just tell the difference in that Lorelai always had someone else to care for her. Lorelai always had someone else. Yes, she became independent and she wanted to do things on her own. But in the end, she always had to ask someone, and that whoever she asked always ended up helping her. Look at Luke with the money she asked him for the inn. Her parents with the money for Chilton. Even Rory went to her parents for Yale. But every time she needed help with something, there was always someone there to help Lorelai. She didn't like it, but she still utilized that. With Rory was more the voice of reason. She had more the mature voice. She had more the adult thought pattern of, you know, Mom, you can't date my teacher. Why would you kiss my teacher like that? Mom, why are you acting like this about Pop-Tarts and your mother? Like, there are things that Lorelai does that flabbergasts her. And then we see in season 6 where she just, I almost feel, and I've thought about the scene a lot when when Mitchum says to Rory, I just don't think you have it. And we're not talking about this, but I just want to say he was right. And he was not a bad guy in that scene. But beyond that, I think part of the reason that Rory flipped out the way she did was because she's been working so hard to be perfect. She's been working so hard to have to be the adult in her home and with her mom. She has had to be the adult. She almost raised Lorelai. And so when he said that to her, it was like, well, what is the point anymore? It's so exhausting to have to work this hard every single day of my life. What is the point? And I think she just had a moment of, I need to not be overwhelmed with the need to be the adult.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that Mitchum wasn't the bad guy. No, we're not going to talk about that, but you know.
But we are.
Happy to Rory. It's okay.
You can't just skim over that now.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's big. You gotta go over, but okay. No, but you're right though. I mean, I feel like I think that with Rory, I think she always felt like, okay, I've got everything right. I'm doing everything right. I've got everything, you know, together. That if you know, I think sometimes like you think if you add everything up, then you should be okay. But life isn't always like that. You know, she can have everything she needs, all the tools she needs. And sometimes we do that and then we don't put the effort in because we have all the tools we need.
Yep.
Then it takes somebody like a Huntsberger throw a wrench
Kinda
in it and
does.
say, okay, I'm taking all this for granted, and I'm really
And
not putting the effort in, even though I think I am, because I have all the tools I need,
and I think it really does speak a lot to how Rory pretty much had to mature pretty, early on in her life because of, who her mother is and how she is. Because I'm just thinking back to myself at, what was she, like 2021?
Lorelai or
At that
Rory?
age, I didn't know anything about anything. Like if someone told me like I want to be a teacher and someone said you don't have it, I would have been like, oh, well, maybe they're right. Like I never really, I don't know. I think she felt like she had it all together. So now she's just flipping out because she's like, oh,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
She was used to
yeah,
being successful in all that
exactly.
she did, with school, and she graduated valedictorian and everything. So she was used to having that praise and that validation. So when it didn't come, it threw her for a loop, you know. And you could even see part of it too, like even in her first year of Yale, that adjustment. And
Mhm.
so I think that's what it was. She was young. She had such a mature childhood. Like she was truly the parent, but yet in this moment she wasn't prepared to take that authority with just her herself. It was
Yeah.
always her and Lorelai, and she could be the parent over Lorelai, but suddenly she had to be the authority in her own life. And I think she was just trying to find her footing and didn't know where she was standing. She was so used to having a certain footing and suddenly it wasn't there. But I know when we first started watching it, Josh was like, so this is a show about a girl and her daughter, her teenage daughter, but she was 16 when she had her daughter. So she was basically raised by her own daughter. That's basically how he describes it to him. It's like, so the daughter's been the parent this whole
That
time.
was an
Yeah.
opening observation.
That is a fantastic rundown of the show.
You don't
think
even need
it's
to
the
watch
best
it. That's all you need.
Yeah, it's the
That
best.
was it.
It's the best rundown of that show I've ever heard.
Right, exactly. So
You're
it's
welcome.
exactly what he told me.
And I think that's part of the reason why Lorelai took what Mitchum said so seriously, so
Right.
hurtfully, because it was, no, my daughter can do anything. And if her daughter is told this and it's accurate, because I mean, if you really break down what Mitchum said to her, he didn't say anything mean. He didn't even say it cruelly.
Sure.
And when she said, well, Harry doesn't, he's like, yeah, but Harry was asking questions. So he even said, I could be wrong. He acknowledged that, but both Rory took it personally, because I think, for what you said, Josh, and I think also what I said earlier goes back to what I said earlier of, she just, if someone was going to tell her who knew, and she even said this to her mom, if you get one guy's word, it's he's the guy you get. And
Yeah.
if he's saying I don't have it, then what am I doing this for? I need a break. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. I've been killing myself for years for this. And I think for Lorelai, it was, no, because you are the one who does good. You're the one who's better than me. If you don't turn out better than me, then I have completely and utterly failed. And that's also a sign of Lorelai's immaturity, that she
Yeah.
doesn't take criticism for, I mean, Rory didn't take it very well, clearly. She stole a yacht. But Lorelai also didn't take it very well. As the mother, she shouldn't be so unwilling to hear criticism of, it wasn't a criticism of Rory either. It was a criticism of the work she did. And you would think that you would take that criticism as the parent. And of course, I could say this all day long because my kids aren't that age yet and I've never been in this situation. So whatever. But I think that as a parent, you kind of have to say, well, maybe not give up, but maybe work a little hard, maybe change how you do things, maybe ask, how can I be better? Rather than, screw him, he's a bad guy, don't ever talk to him again, you're better than him. Well, not really, because he's been doing this for years. He's an expert. He knows what he's doing, clearly, because it's pretty profitable business for him.
Yeah.
He's not unknowledgeable, and she's able to dismiss him so quickly just because he had a criticism about her daughter's work, and her daughter is the adult in that relationship. So if she's got it wrong, if she fails, not only is Lorelai failing, but it disrupts all of how Lorelai thinks.
I agree. And you got to remember too, like, what's the old saying? It takes a village.
Yeah.
All all everybody in Stars Hollow has kind of helped raise Rory. I mean, you even talk about it at the graduation,
Yeah.
So in all of that, everything that she does, she's always been praised for, and that's because everybody had a part in that. So if
Yeah.
Rory's doing good, that meant I was doing good. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And it's kind of one of those things. And so she's always had a lot of that. Now, warranted, some of it was very justifiable. You know what I mean? She did a lot of great things. I mean, there's not diminishing any of that. But at the same time, when you get into the real world outside of Stars Hollow, you're gonna run into some stuff. You're gonna run into things that you weren't prepared for. That a little town, even including all all of its citizens, can't prepare you for. And I think maybe too, we were talking about a year in the life earlier. That is kind of the result of that. We see that where she's kind of like everything's kind of falling apart. And then she doesn't have her life together, in many ways. And it's kind of like, okay, well, that was disappointing, but at the same time, it's like maybe it wasn't unwarranted.
Yeah.
This was kind of one of those things, but it's interesting to kind of see that.
Maybe I'm a little like Lorelai, and that's why I don't like A Year in the Life, because Rory has been told she can't do things, and then she proves it. No, you can do anything, Rory. You can do anything.
Yeah.
Well, and
I think the whole town just put her on this huge pedestal.
Yeah.
And when she got thrown into the real world, I think it was a shock for her.
Yeah.
And I think that's very real. You know what I mean? I think that's very real to a lot of things. I mean, we can you see a lot of kids that are great in high school, but then do horrible in college. Or you see a lot of kids that do great in college and then do horrible in real world, real world environments. And that's just kind of the way it is. But I think that's why everybody keeps wanting A Year in the Life too, because they want to see all that fixed. We want to see them successful.
Absolutely.
And
we want to find out how Logan is going to handle having being a daddy.
Hold up there.
But
I knew you were going to have something to say about that.
It's Logan's. It's obviously Logan's.
He's
We
not
don't
gonna
know if she's
I
like
know it
this.
is. It is.
That's true, Beth.
Yeah.
Luke's gonna kill all of the potential, even if they're not the father. He's just gonna find a laundry list, and none of them are gonna survive. Luke's gonna take all of them out.
Yep.
They're just gonna end up disappearing somehow. It's like,
If they make it the Wookiee, I'm boycotting everything the Paladinos do from here on out.
Me too.
I agree too. I don't understand that.
Or Paul's, because if she can't remember the man's name, she has no business sleeping with him.
Who?
Poor Paul.
See? Exactly.
I felt so bad.
Was
for
that a
him. I was
serious who, Josh, or was that a joke?
like- I felt so bad for that poor guy, because I was like, what is the whole point of having him on the show except just to prove that Rory is either ditzy or a terrible
A
person.
terrible person.
I think it was to prove that she was a terrible person. No, I'm just joking. But
And she even almost ran out of the diner while he was in the bathroom because she forgot about him.
Nobody remembered his tea. He's like,
So-
order me a tea, and like he didn't remember himself. So I'm like, is it just something that's like he himself is forgetting stuff? I'm just kidding.
in all seriousness, I don't think it was to prove that she was a horrible person. I just think it was just really, really bad writing and really, really bad TV. I think it was supposed to be a joke, and I think it was supposed to be funny and maybe mirror what's the other the oh gosh, I'm so bad with names. I'm bad with names. The other coffee guy. The one that Lorelai dated for like Alex, thank you. I knew it was Alex. See?
What right now?
I
He
forgot.
just disappeared.
Exactly. So it's almost like it kind of felt like maybe it was trying to mirror that. I brought that up one time to some people and they're like, no, you're crazy. But I still feel like that was kind of one of those things because Alex just disappeared. Like we forgot about it. It was gone.
I didn't.
It was gone.
I loved
Well,
Alex.
I know, but it was like in the series, everybody just forgot about him. Like even Lorelai. It's like I don't think he's even mentioned. Maybe once again after we don't see him anymore. So it's kind of like maybe that they were trying to mirror that and make a joke in some way, but
I'd agree with that. That makes not because I always kind of thought they were trying to make a funny plot point, but it wasn't funny. It just fell flat. Now you say that makes more sense because people talk about missing Alex all the time.
Yeah.
And this show's been off the air for at that point had been off the air for 10 years. So I mean that's 10 years of Paladinos hearing where did Alex go?
What about Alex?
It makes
Yeah.
sense that they would twist it and be like, look we're keeping our fans in that we're giving you an Easter egg here. Ha ha ha. But it
They
just
do the same thing.
Exactly.
It doesn't exactly work with a series that only has 4 episodes, though.
And it doesn't work with someone actively forgetting them every other minute.
Right.
I mean, Alex dropped off the face of the earth and no one mentioned him again.
Yeah.
What the bad writing and the attempt to be, and that's the other reason I didn't like A Year in Life. It felt so forced. Like everything they did, it felt like they were trying to make a gag. It felt like they were trying to do a bit. And I wish there was some real moments like there were in Gilmore Girls, because you could relate with them. With Rory and Lorelai, when they had a hard time, you really, really connect with them, because Alexis Bledel and Lauren Graham are great at what they do. And the Palladinos are excellent writers. So you connected with them when there was something truly hard. Like the scene in Year in the Life that I thought was really good was when Lorelai called Emily.
Oh, I was literally about to say
mountainside.
that. Yeah.
That was the moment in that was the one moment in that whole series that I was like, oh, there's the Lorelai that I need. There she is. Yeah. And it wasn't because she was sad. It was because it was an act. It wasn't a fantastical thing. It was a real thing that could really happen. And that was my other issues. It's too fantastical. It wasn't. Gilmore Girls was at least grounded in reality. Yes, there's no way Lorelai could have afforded to eat that much takeout. But so things like that weren't real. But the emotions they played and the humanity they put in them, that was real. Yeah.
After that scene with the phone call to Emily, I mean, that, like you said, that was real, like moving, a real tearjerker, and that kind of brought like a feeling of completion and just like a relief, almost like a reset, feel. And then plus I can never look at another salted pretzel the same way again.
Yep. Exactly. And to kind of go back to what you were saying about Lorelai or Rory being raised by the town, I think the other aspect too is that she did deserve that praise because she was the adult in that household. So Lorelai was more mature, Rory was more mature than Lorelai. So
you're right.
around the town, it's like all these other adults are like, yeah, this is my buddy. She's my friend because she's on my level. It was easy to put her up on this pedestal because a 13, 14, 15-year-old shouldn't be able to be as responsible as Rory was, shouldn't be able to have the maturity that she did. But she lived in a household where her mother was stuck as 16-year-old her.
Yeah.
And so Rory had to be the adult. And I think that was an impressive thing. So I think that was to her detriment, though, in some ways, because as we said, they put her up so high that when she got real criticism in the real world, it didn't work, especially with like the Huntsbergers, when Logan had been on that pedestal since birth without even doing anything. And he could take criticism. I mean, better than Rory, but I still wouldn't say good. But he could still handle some criticism. He lived with Mitchum, who harassed him all the time and was nothing but negative to him. But what Logan did is he pushed harder in the way he wanted to go. What Rory did when she got criticism was she retreated into herself. And like, I'm no good at anything. Because she was not, and if you think about it, that's how 16-year-old Lorelai was.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's how Rory became, because that's how Lorelai, and again, this is a 16-year-old raising a baby. This is why this stuff shouldn't happen. Because raising kids does not work very well. And that's what she was. She was living in this hotel with a woman who she had just met, who admittedly took her under her wing and taught her stuff. But you can see that Lorelai became this force of, I'm going to do it my way because now I have to, and I have to prove to all of you that I was not wrong in doing this. Whereas if she would have just said, you know what? And she kind of said that at that one where her and Luke went to the school to speak. And then all the kids were like, so you got pregnant at 16?
Oh boy.
And she was like, I wouldn't recommend how I did it, but I'm glad it happened. Like, even in that, it just kind of felt like you can still say there's no way that you wanted to be pregnant at 16 and you were sad you were pregnant at 16. You can say, I love my daughter and I'm glad I have my daughter with me now, but it's okay to say,
yeah,
I didn't want to be pregnant at 16. I was sad and upset that I was pregnant when I was 16, because that's honesty, that's real. And I think that because she never admitted that, she had to constantly fight to prove that everything she did was good and right, her way was the best way, that it ended up her being stuck in the 16-year-old maturity level.
Yeah.
And you can see that too with how she argues with Emily over everything, with how she's trying to raise Rory. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of played off as, Emily just trying to interfere in their lives. But it's actually, decent advice. She wanted to get decent internet for Rory to do her schoolwork. She was like, no, we're gonna eat our sandwich and do a dance instead. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, just if I don't know, if my mother came over and said, hey, I want to get you better internet, hey, by the way, I'm paying for it, I'd be like, cool, sign me up,
My
please.
kid could really use that, so let's do that.
Yeah.
And even Rory points it out too when they had the termites. And Rory's like, why don't you just ask them? And then Rory asked them anyway, and Lorelai gets really upset.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting things for your child that she needs, especially when she's going to this very prestigious school where the demands are significantly higher, sometimes sacrificing your pride for that is what's necessary. And I don't think we really see a whole lot of Lorelai doing that except when she asked for money for Chilton. But even in that, she didn't really sacrifice her pride all that much. She's still like, the moment, here, I paid it all back, now I owe you nothing. So it's still, even in that, she didn't really sacrifice her pride. But the one good thing I will say about Emily trying to pay for their internet is it brought us Mick, who then became Kirk. Without Emily trying to pay for the internet,
we
would
would
we
never.
even have a Kirk?
Right.
Where would
We
we be
were
without
just
her?
talking about that the other day. We were thinking, you know what? You can actually make that whole thing canon, and part of it, because it's Kirk and he does so many weird things. Like, it could be he was going through a weird phase. He wanted to be a guy.
Wanted to go by
Nick.
name, by different name, you know.
The whole town went along with it because it's Kirk, and they were just trying to help him along, and it was just one of his other schemes, you know.
Like, okay, Kirk, what's your name today? Oh, it's Nick.
How's Nick? Okay, now he's Kirk again. You know, he just could have been one of those.
And it was on his shirt though, right?
Yeah,
He-
it's a Mick on a shirt.
So how do we know it was actually his shirt? Like he didn't
Exactly.
just have somebody else's. Then Lorelai was just like, "Hey, Mick."
When I went to high
That's
school in the
Lorelai
90s,
shirt,
wearing
too.
work shirts was a big deal, like the button-up work shirts from like
Yeah.
working in a garage. Those are big, cool things to wear in the 90s. And we always had some dude's name on our shirt, and we'd wear it around like we were so cool. And I wasn't a guy.
He could have just
Kirk was
randomly
late.
worn the shirt.
Exactly.
And
You know,
that
that-
started all.
The show premiered in, I suppose 2000, but still, it was kind of popular in 2000.
Close
Still.
enough to the 90s. Yeah, that if it was
90s adjacent.
Yeah.
90s adjacent. There you
And-
go.
One thing you got to remember too is that not every home had the internet, and so
Yeah.
the internet was a luxury too.
Mhm.
So I'm sure he
And
was kind of thinking,
expensive.
okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna start living like mom and dad, you know, and
Oh, that's a good point.
still trying to push that aspect of her life out, you know.
Like-
Now we think of the internet as a necessity. I mean, I think it's classified as a utility.
Yeah.
So like,
Mhm.
if you don't have it, it's like you're it's like not having water, but
But you can see that too in like when she tries to buy Rory clothes for Chilton. And Lorelai's like, no, absolutely not. You can't buy her a single thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was pride and principle. And it's funny that we're talking about this because just a couple of days ago, my mom was telling a story about when she was in college and she went to go visit one of her friends who was also in college. And she walked to her apartment and there was this like huge grand piano, like right as you walk into this tiny little apartment. And every time somebody walked in, she would give this disclaimer. And she's like, well, you know, my in-laws, they're very wealthy and they exactly. So they write it, they give us money, but they don't let us spend it on what we need to spend it on. Like they'll tell us, like, here's money and it's for a grand piano and that's it, you know? And
Yeah.
so she would be so embarrassed. And every time her friends would come over, she would like apologize for it and feel like she had to explain it away. And it's maybe Lorelai is probably coming from a different place. I think here she just was kind of like a little bit, you know, embarrassed about it, where I think for Lorelai, it's more of like a pride thing, more of a principle thing. It's like, I'm my own person. I am who I am, and I'm not going to let them turn me into them. So, you know,
Yeah.
with the grand piano in the apartment, you know, she's thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is not who I am. They're trying to make me live like them. Like I'm college student in an apartment. I'm not like some wealthy family where I can have a grand piano. And so I think that's what kind of like, again, from a different perspective, but I think that's what Lorelai was feeling like, okay, here's Richard and Emily forcing me to live like
Yeah.
Richard and Emily Gilmore, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to live like Lorelai Gilmore, you know, and I think that's what she was thinking. So
Yeah.
everything that they offered, that's why she returned it down. Like, not even my kids' clothes. And I'm thinking, that's your mom, you know, let
Yeah.
her buy clothes, you know.
well, and Emily literally did that with the furniture in the dorm. So
Yes, that literally happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mother was here.
I can smell it.
What'd you say? It smells like Chanel number 5 and guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it smells like Chanel number 5 and guilt. My mother's been here.
I love it.
I think too that you could kind of see when she went to Chilton. Remember when she missed that test? And Lorelai went in there with a vengeance of how dare you? And even though they're telling her, listen, no kid gets this treatment. No kid gets to retake it. No kid gets to go in there and come in late and still take the test. No kid does. This is not something we're holding against Rory. It's the standard we hold every kid to. And that almost seems to enrage Lorelai more. Like, my kid should get special treatment, but why? And I think Lorelai always has that viewpoint. My kid is special, so she should get special treatment, without realizing that every parent feels like that a little bit. And you should, and I feel like that sometimes too, like my kid should get this spot, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it because I understand that every parent thinks this about their kid. So
I'm a
why should
teacher,
my kid be
and
treated any better than the other kids?
as a teacher, I can verify that.
Yeah.
Every parent think, like every single parent's like, I want you to watch my kid, only my kid at recess to make sure no one's hitting them. It's like, oh, okay. So like the 20 other kids are supposed to just, hit each other with sticks and
Lord
do
of the
whatever the heck
Flies
they
for
want.
everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that's normal. Parents just don't, my parents kind of have an excuse because I teach kindergarten. So parents have never really experienced their kid being around other kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's-
Lorelai just wants Rory to be special. That's it.
But
And I
she,
think she felt guilty too because Rory was going to go to bed. She was going to set her alarm. And I think she was the one that kind of helped, the process of, okay, Rory fell asleep at the kitchen table. She slept in. She couldn't make it on time. So I think it was almost kind of like we went through all this hard work. We
Mhm.
climbed so many mountains. And one little detail that I did caused all of this to just go out the window. And I think so it was probably almost like there's no way that I'm gonna let this happen. Like, we gotta reverse this action. Like, there's got to be something to do. So I think part of that was like her feeling responsible and then trying to fix it as well, and then it being a new setting. This is Chilton and they've never been in that kind of setting before.
yeah.
So I think that was a lot of it. It was so much new for her and just kind of like, like, what did I do? What's happening?
Could have been easily avoided. I mean, Lorelai is supposed to be the adult in this, and it kind of circles back to how, Rory's more of the adult because Rory said, like she said, okay, time for bed. She said, no, I think I'm going to stay up and study more. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No, my mother would have come and like closed the book and shoved me into my room and said, you're going to bed. Good night. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And she realized that far too soon. I mean, far too late. She didn't realize it soon enough that, oops, I should have taken that authority. I should have made sure that, she got to her test on time. She was set her alarm, that all of these things should have taken place for her to get there and have a successful test. And that's just part of Lorelai having to suddenly mature once Chilton came along. She had to stop being a teenager. And I think that was just one of the steps of that happening.
Yeah. And I think too that the other aspect is that, especially in that situation, you see that I like that you brought that up, Eve, about her wanting to go to bed. But Lorelai's mom told her what to do. Lorelai's mom laid out everything for her. Of course, that's how Emily was made to be a mom. But Lorelai was so unhappy that she actively worked to do everything she did the opposite of her parents. Everything, even if it made sense. And that's, I mean, we see that in the Pop-Tart thing, where I don't know if I like things because I like them or because my mother doesn't like them. So even with that, I think Lorelai came into parenthood as, my kid's going to have her own mind and my kid's going to be able to do whatever she wants, however she wants. And that doesn't help with maturity. She got lucky with Rory. And I think Lorelai has said that on numerous occasions. She got lucky with Rory because Rory matured faster and Rory was the responsible one of the two of them. Even when it came to like lists and groceries and that sort of thing, like Rory was the responsible one there. So I think that benefited Lorelai, but not so much Rory. But even in that, it was saying, no, I'm going to study more. Okay, well, that's because her kids got to make their own decisions. Her kids weren't going to be pigeonholed to doing something they didn't want to do, regardless of the fact that kids need discipline, regardless of the fact. And there wasn't even a teacher that. Mia, for all the amazing things that she did and is to them, she wasn't her parent. So I doubt Mia felt comfortable laying down the law with Lorelai or Rory because she wasn't their mother or grandmother.
It was a free spirit too.
Yeah. And she saw herself, and she said this as much to Emily, she saw herself as supporting Lorelai rather than parenting her.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Mia was such a free spirit, very eccentric in a way, I mean, that
Mhm.
kind of thing as well too. So I think a lot of that rubbed off on the Lorelai and subsequently, Rory as well too. And I think that kind of, that kind of open thinking, you know what I mean, kind of thing, kind of
Yeah.
was what they were looking for, because it was the exact opposite of Emily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why she connected with her so well.
Mhm.
And, it's funny how, and I'm sure you can all relate to the same thing. I don't know. Have you guys all watched it from 2000? Like, did you start watching it when it premiered on TV?
I started watching it pretty late. Like, I didn't catch up until right as season 7 aired.
Okay. What about you guys?
We binge watched it, believe it or not. Actually, so I first saw it in probably maybe 2018, I guess, something
Oh,
like
wow.
that. Oh yeah, no, I'm late to the game. Yeah, and binge
Late
watched it
bloomer.
all. I know. And kind of binge watch it from there. And I saw it on my own first, and then I was like, hey, you know what? You guys are gonna like this show. And then shared it with the rest of them, and of course they fell in love with it, and then the rest is history. So yeah, no, we've been spoiled to kind of just watch it all together.
That's true. That's a good point. And for our listeners, Beth and Josh are brother and sister, just
Yeah.
in case you didn't know that. So, and Bethany, you started watching in 2018 as well?
Well, actually, no, believe it or not, and I feel like I've been in this fandom my whole life, but I actually didn't see it. I was very, very, very aware of Gilmore Girls, like probably even back in the 2000s, but I was never familiar with it. I had never seen it. When A Year in the Life came out, there was a huge deal about it. So I was very, very aware of all the fanfare from A Year in the Life. Still wasn't super familiar with it. Believe it or not, I didn't binge it until March of 2020. When
Oh, wow.
the lockdown hit. And so we're like, okay, we can't do anything outside of our house. Let's watch something fun and lighthearted. And we just started from the beginning and we binged the whole thing. And that's why it seems so weird that it's such a recent thing. But that's when I first watched it from beginning to end. But it was nice because I was able to see it, season 1, episode 1, all the way to fall of Year in the Life. No interruption other than when we had to eat and sleep.
You guys had it easy.
Yeah. But I think that's why it was so cool to do that. And I think why it was easy to just immerse into this world. I felt like I was like in Stars Hollow for some time there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What about you, Amanda? When did you start watching it? There's a point to this, I swear.
I'm kind of weird. I watched episodes here and there when it came on TV, like when I was younger and it kind of started and everything. I watched episodes here and there, but I never fully watched the entire thing until I think it was about like 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then I've seen it a couple of times since then.
Well, none of you are going to relate to what I'm going to say then.
Oh, no.
But our audience will. I have watched it since the very first day it aired.
Wow.
Now, and because I was in high school, when I was graduating high school, the year it premiered in September of 2000, I believe, and I graduated May of 2001 from high school. So I've been watching it since then. There was a couple seasons that I missed when I was living in my own apartment, broke and didn't have cable. But when I went to college, now I grew up in the age where you recorded your stuff on a VHS tape.
Oh yeah,
That's my decade.
That's too.
So when I went to college, I had this friend who was also going to college with me, and she was as obsessed with Gilmore Girls as I was. We would get together and when we were in high school and watch it, and she recorded them all. And so I would borrow them from her, make all of my suite mates binge it with me via VHS tape. And so we'd have to fast forward all the commercials and everything. And we got caught up. And then from that moment on, I've watched it in order every single week. So what I've noticed, and the reason I bring this up is because I've noticed that when I started watching in 2000, and I watched the entire series from front to end at least once a year. Minimum of once a year. I watched the whole thing. So I've probably seen each episode. It premiered 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably seen each episode a minimum of 20 times.
Wow.
At least. And so what I've noticed is that when I go back and watch season 1, every year I feel different about how I view these characters, because as I'm growing as a person, as I wasn't married when I first watched this. I'm married now. I wasn't a parent when I first watched it. I'm a parent now. So there's all these different aspects. And so it might sound like I'm ragging on Lorelai and Rory, but I'm not. And that's the great thing about this show. That's amazing, because this is like I think John Cabrera called it a diamond or something like that. He called it something, because there is not often you find a show that you can watch over and over and over again and not only get a different reaction, but get new generations every single year watching this, binging it, relating to it. That doesn't happen very often. And so this show, when you watch it, my perceptions of the actors and the characters change as I change and as I go into the situations there. And because at first, when I started watching the show, I was like, oh, because I was very close to I still am very close to my mom. She was the maid of honor at my wedding. We are always very close. And so I always thought, I'm going to have this relationship with my daughters. My daughter and I are going to be Lorelai and Rory. And now that I'm a parent, I'm like, I don't
Maybe not.
want that relationship with
You're
my
like,
kid.
maybe not Rory, Lorelai.
I want to be close with them like that. I want her to, my kid, because I have 3 daughters now. So that, like, the pressure is on to be Lorelai and Rory with all 3 of my girls. But there's part of me that wants that same connection with my kids, but I absolutely want to be their authority figure.
Right.
I don't want there to be any doubt that if it comes down to being your friend or your parent, I'm going to be your parent every single time. I will choose being your parent over your friend every time. I want to be your friend, but I also have to be your parent. It's my job. It's my obligation. And it's what is not just expected of me, but that's what I owe you, is being your parent. And I think that Lorelai ran from that so much because she saw being a parent as being controlling. Granted, Richard and Emily had a tight noose on her.
They were.
But there's a balance, and I don't think Lorelai ever got to learn that. And that's not a fault of hers exactly. It's because she ran because she was suffocating. And that's why she left her home. It wasn't because I'll show you. It ended up being that was her personality, but it was because she was suffocating in that house. She had no air and she had to get out. And I think she just saw this life laid out for her daughter that was misery, because that's what she was. And she didn't want that for her daughter. So I respect her for getting out of that situation, because that's why she did it. It wasn't like, I'll show you. But I do feel it became that a little bit as she got older. I don't think it was that at first. I think she was just this young girl in pain, not being able to breathe, not feeling like she could raise her daughter, not feeling she could protect her daughter, and had to get out. But as she was out in the world on her own, away from her parents, it became, I can do this on my own. I'll show you. I'm going to prove to you that the way you raised me was wrong. I'm going to prove to you that how I can do this is right. And that was a detriment. So I've altered how I've seen them every year that I've watched it. And I still love them. But the other thing I've noticed about them is that they're pretty selfish characters. I didn't see that the first few years I watched it. But if you look at the friendships with Suki and Lorelai, Lorelai's a pretty selfish friend. She does nice things for Suki here and there, but most of it is Suki giving and Lorelai taking. Same with Lane and Rory. Most of it is Rory taking and Lane giving. But again, there are moments where Rory gives to Lane. It's just not the norm.
Yeah.
I was noticing that the other day when I was watching Lorelai and Suki, and I said, wow, Suki, it's like it was almost one-sided. Suki's just giving and giving and giving. And she's doing it because it's Lorelai and it's her best friend. But I stopped and realized, I was like, this feels very one-sided. I mean, you see it, but again, the more you watch it, the more layers that you're able to discover and uncover and realize. And yeah, I just noticed that in the other day when I was watching it. You know, it can be one-sided when it comes to Lorelai and Suki, and of course Rory and Lane. Absolutely.
I think there is something really special with this show. Like you were saying, you've seen it 20 times. I've probably seen it 10 times at least, at minimum, maybe more, you know, because sometimes it's on and it's, you know, and you're doing stuff, you know what I mean? And before you know it, a season's gone. You know what I mean? It's just kind of that kind of thing. But you're right. I have yet to seen another show that is the same way as Gilmore Girls. It doesn't that has the same way to make you feel lighthearted and happy, yet at the same time teach you some sort of lesson, and then also make you feel like emotionally moved. You know what I mean? All at the same time. You know, I've not seen another show that can do that. And then it's lighthearted. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, it's perfect. Like, you step into this little town and it's just like you're a part of it, you know what I mean? It's just like I have yet to see that, you know. And I think there's a lot of complexity to it, and that's why we're able to see the faults with these characters that we absolutely love.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, when you see them as you're changing, you see the different perspectives of that maybe something you didn't see before, you know, when you watch it again, you know, when you do the, you know, or when you binge it, or when you only watch one episode at a time. And I think that really shows the level of how do I say of good writing that
Yeah.
the Melodinos have. Now, of course, you know, they're not gonna hit it 100% all the time, Paul, but you know, hey, but still, I think it just kind of gives that complexity to their writing and to their thoughts when they're putting it together. And I think that's what kind of just makes the show so great, you know. And I haven't yet to find anything like it anywhere else.
Yeah, and every time I watch this show, like I haven't been through any major life changes like Maureen explained, you know, I'm still single, no kids. But still, it's like every time I watch it, I see it through a different lens. Like the most recent time I watched, I think I watched it earlier this year all the way through. And I saw pretty much most of the season through Emily's eyes. And that kind of got me thinking, well, Lorelai does not have it all together. She does not know what's going on.
Yeah.
And even in one episode where Emily was like, I want to have the relationship that you and Rory have. And Lorelai said, Rory and I are best friends first and mother and daughter second. And I'm like, well, that's not how a mother-daughter relationship works. Like it can't, like that's impossible. It can't work that way because you don't tell your best friends when it's time to go to bed.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I don't change my best friend's underwear or diapers. So
exactly, that would kind of destroy the friendship a little bit. But,
a little bit.
But I mean,
unless I had to.
But I think Lorelai was just never able to see that. Yes, eventually I can be best friends with my daughter, because like my mom and I, we're really close now. Like we hang out like we're buddies. But up until I was 18 years old, her job was to be my mother.
Yeah.
Right.
And mothers don't take you out to bars because they're getting married the next day. Because do you guys remember that it was the
bachelorette party
for
she was the
her marriage
Rory,
to
the
Matt.
supermodel.
Yeah. And
International.
and like they were at the bar and Rory was there. I was like, no. It's like, I know that she's really mature and everything, but no amount of maturity gets someone under 21 into a bar. Yes, Amanda.
I used to go to the bar with my mom when I was 18. I mean, I was 18 at least.
Rory wasn't even out of high school yet. Rory was a sophomore in high
you're
school.
from Texas,
I was still in high school. I mean,
Rory was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to drink or anything like that. I mean, but I don't know. We
do things differently in Texas.
Yeah, my mom was fine. I think my mom felt better going with me so she could watch me.
She was chaperoning you, not taking you along.
I think the difference there is that you were 18, Rory was 15.
Right.
Yeah.
Right though. It's weird to take and not just take your daughter to a bar, but also very obviously lie to get her in there. Use a different, like she was an international known supermodel, Rory. Just one name. Like teaching her how to illegally do things. Not the best course of action for a mom to
like,
say.
hey Rory, you might want to know how to do this in college. Let's practice now. Like,
Exactly.
It's a learning experience.
And I get that she wanted her there because she was her best friend, but I think that is the problem right there.
Yeah.
If you want to have your daughter with you at your bachelorette party, do something she can do legally.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Go bowling.
Exactly.
Go bowling, drop her off at home, and then go to the bar with your friends.
As a parent, she should have seen that. She should have been like, hey, you know what? What would you rather have? Your daughter with you or the activity? So she should have, as a parent, said, I'd rather have my daughter with me. So I'm going to change up the activity to match something that would be okay for Rory, but that's just another example of how, you know, she was trying to be a best friend versus a mother, not realizing that she had that flopped, you know, that
Mhm.
she could have helped Rory if she truly wanted to be a friend to Rory. The best thing that she could have done as a friend was to be her mother and be that authority figure, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think we see that too in my most hated episode and my most loved episode all at the same time.
Uh-oh.
The end of season 4, the final episode of season 4. You guys know what happened there? Luke and Lorelai kiss for the first time.
Yeah,
Rory also sleeps with a married guy.
nothing else happened, you know.
So my favorite
That's
and
all
least
that
favorite
happened.
parts about this show are in one episode, and I think that's really unfair of Amy Sherman Palladino to do to the rest of us.
Or brilliant.
Like, no, not brilliant. She gave me both ends of the spectrum, and I can't. My
Brilliant
mind
is
cannot
horrible.
reconcile those. In my head, they're two different episodes.
Yes.
In reality, they're not. So every time I go around, like seriously, I've been watching this show for 20 years. Every time I get around that episode in season 4, I'm like, what? Because I forget that it's the same episode because I have to separate them in order for it to not me not want to hurt
Well,
things.
Maureen, if it helps, they talk about what happened in the next episode.
Yes, but the act happened in
So-
episode 4 or the last
So
season.
you can you can still try and trick your brain to thinking they're two different episodes.
Well, what I was going to say is that even in that, when Lorelai tries to pull the mom card there and say, hey, he's a married guy. What are you doing? You can't do this stuff. You cannot make these decisions. Rory, he's not your guy. Rory reacted so strongly, one, because of guilt and shame, I assume, but also because she was expecting her friend to come out and play, not her mom.
That part, actually, I thought about it earlier when we were talking almost at the beginning of this thing. That's the one part of Gilmore Girls that I cannot stand, is that, you know, Rory's, she's not old enough to do that, but she is mature enough, I think. And I feel like Lorelai hasn't been a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I feel like Rory tried to come to Lorelai and talk to her about it, and mom came out.
Yep.
And it felt so two-faced to me.
Mm-hmm.
I could not, that's part I can't even talk straight about it because it makes me mad.
And you see how Lane reacted to it. And I think that's what Rory
Yeah.
wanted, was how Lane reacted, because that's what Lorelai has been a mom in the fact that Rory never wanted for anything. Lorelai always made it work in terms of money, food, finances, clothing, schooling. Lorelai always made it work.
Yeah.
But there's more to being a mother than providing, because really it was her parents that provided a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, there's more to it than that. You also have to teach. You also have to train. You also have to equip. And I'm not great at that. So I'm not saying, you know, Lorelai, you should follow my example. Because I don't even know. I tell my oldest daughter, who's going to be 11 in a couple months, which is mind blowing to me. But I tell her all the time, listen, you're our first kid. We have no idea what we're doing with you. None.
No.
So, and I tell her that. I literally tell her that all the time when she's like, you guys are so unfair. Well, we're experimenting. I don't know what else to tell you.
We'll get it right with the
Go.
youngest.
We've learned from you, and now we do treat the other ones differently, because with you we had no idea. With the others we have a better idea. But Lorelai, she never really does that. She never tries out anything. And even the times when they were going to Chilton, she says, you know, I don't pull the mom card often. You don't pull it out ever.
Yeah.
So that you lay your foot down is great, but I honestly think that if Lorelai hadn't laid her foot down about the Chilton thing, Rory would have come to that conclusion. She just had to stew and fight it for a bit.
Yeah.
The
She would have
fact
come to
that
the right conclusion on her own, because that she's had to do that.
and the fact that she never pulls out the mom card is what makes her need to pull the mom card. I mean, it's kind of, you know, a catch-22, because if she was more the mom, then she probably wouldn't have to pull the mom card out as often as she probably would have needed to.
I
Rory
can see some
would have been-
validity to that.
Yeah.
And for the record, I think Lorelai was absolutely right about the Dean situation in season 4.
Oh yeah.
I fully side with her, but I also understand that she's been best friend for so long instead of mom, that Rory reacted the way she did for a reason. Because who are you to tell me this is wrong? Who are you to tell me? Who are you to take away this moment? You're supposed to be I don't think she says you're supposed to be my mama. I think she's like, you're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to be on my side.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's what she says actually on my side. Yeah.
Well, she is, but that means in a loving, caring way, and discipline is loving and caring. So they never had that boundary.
Absolutely. And I think Lorelai hasn't even figured out, she even mentioned that too, after Dean and Rory's first kiss, that she was trying to help her understand, hey, don't be afraid because I don't even understand relationships myself. So she was admitting that, you know, I mean, she became a mom at 16, so she never really had a chance to learn that part, to have an adult relationship as far as, you know, emotional maturity, and to be able to pass that on to Rory and be like, hey, this is what's appropriate, this is what, you know, is these are the steps that you should follow. She herself was 16 years old when it came to relationships, and so she didn't know how to parent in that way, you know, so she didn't, you know. And obviously we've been saying that, you know, there's a lot of parenting aspects that she never did, but I think that was the main one, and that was the one that she recognized, and it was the one, it was something that she felt, I guess she couldn't, I think she even said that herself, like, I don't even know how to teach you because I don't know myself yet, you know. She was still 16 years old emotionally.
And I think that there is some part of her who thought that she was mothering because she remembered how she felt in her own home. And she never wanted her kid to feel like that. So she worked really hard to do the opposite of all of her upbringing.
Absolutely.
So she thought that she was mothering because, well, it's nothing like how I grew up. You have no idea. And she even says it to Rory a couple times when, after her and Richard's first fight, and Lorelai sides with Richard, and she's like, you know, I feel like I finally know what it's like to be a Gilmore. And Lorelai's like, no. I had that crown. I'm the one who lived with them for 16 years. So even in that, I think that she really did. And again, 16-year-old girls should not be having babies because they don't have enough experience of the world yet. They don't know. It's a shame when kids have to raise kids because they're still kids. Not that when you're 18, it's a magic number and you're an adult. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're young, that young, and you're having kids, it's, and Lorelai has admitted that, you know, she said, I wouldn't recommend the way it happened because she doesn't know. And everything, I mean, mentally, everything in that age, I don't know if you guys remember what it was like to be 16, but everything was a competition to me when I was 16. I had to prove myself in every way. And I'm a sports person. So I was like really competitive, and it was like, I have to be the best, and I have to do this well. And there's also a lot of things I didn't understand mentally about myself. I just knew how I felt. I couldn't always place why I felt that way. And that's what Lorelai was walking into. She didn't like how she was raised. She didn't like how she felt. I don't think she fully understand why she felt that way though. So all she did was channel that to, okay, I'm going to do the opposite of everything my parents did because I felt this way. So I'm just going to do the opposite so that my kid never feels that way, but not fully understanding why she felt that way, if that makes sense. And I do think though that when Rory gets into college, that relationship as it is feels more balanced because Rory is more on her own now. So now they're kind of more on the same level because they're both mentally, I think they're both the same age.
Well, and Lorelai was on her own.
Yeah.
So she was learning how to do things on her own, you know. It's even like when she came back and she's like, why is there not all the food in the fridge? Where are all the magazines? You know what I mean? It was like, you know, that was, I understand there was, you know, a point to all of that, but still it was a difference, you know what I mean? It was her growth, you know, it's on her own, you know, she didn't have Rory to focus on, you know.
And maybe that's the key right there, is that from the age of a kid, which is 16, until Rory went to school, she never got to experience being an adult. And once she was gone, she actually was like, hey, I only have to care for myself. I only have to think about myself.
Yep.
Okay. Because even you saw it manifest with Suki when they were building the inn, and she almost like would protect Suki from the bad news.
Right.
Which was not a very wise thing to do with your business partner, but her attempt was to protect Suki. And that, I do think that shows us, even though it wasn't a wise business decision, I think that shows some growth in Lorelai. Instead of turning to Suki and trying to have Suki fix it all, Lorelai's like, okay, we're going to do this. And I can't tell you this because you're going to have an emotional breakdown. So I need you to think everything's good so you keep functioning and we can keep this afloat. And Lorelai made the big decision to go to Luke and ask him for that money. So you do see that growth once Rory leaves. And I have to bring up the college scene. You go ahead, Josh, and I'm going to bring up the dorm scene.
No, I was just gonna say you see the growth in A Year in the Life also.
Mhm.
You know, on the walkabout when she does when she goes out on her own, and of course I guess she never actually does go on the walkabout, but she's there in the hotel room, and I mean it's just like you get all the and of course finally when she gets to the she's looking for coffee, right? It always has to deal with coffee, right? I've got my
Of course it does.
coffee right here.
You know, Scotty Peas.
Scotty Beans, yeah. and
I'm watching all of you drink out of your coffee ghosts, by the way, and I didn't have time to grab my drink before I came down here. Now I really want tea and I really want coffee real bad. Just throwing that
I'm almost done with mine and I'm regretting not refilling it.
All right, keep going, Josh.
Shameless promotion for Scotty Peas coffee. If you've not tried it,
Oh, I need to try some.
And if you want to sponsor, that's great too.
And if you leave this in during the podcast, maybe he'll come on. We're plugging Scotty Peas coffee.
So should we just put an ad like right here? Let's just insert an ad for Scotty Peas coffee.
Only coffee to drink.
No, but it's funny just seeing Lorelai on her own again. Going on the walkabout. Or attempting to do that. It just even in that small amount of time, it just like she blossomed, and it was okay. I figured out mom and dad. And I figured out what I'm going to do with Luke, and it was like she had never had that opportunity to do that before until she was like, okay, everything else is gone. Rory's gone. Everybody's gone. I'm just here, It's almost like she found herself,
Yeah.
Everything clicked.
Yeah.
And I think what it was too is the reason why she was finally free to marry Luke is because she made that peace with her mother. She said that herself, that her mother's married, so I don't want to be married. She wanted to do everything opposite of Emily. So when she made that peace with Emily, she's like, I don't have to be against her anymore. I'm free, to do what I want to. So she was free to marry Luke because she was no longer using that as a tool, to be opposite of Emily. It no longer represented that, And it took him way too long to realize that.
Absolutely. But I do, and I know we're not talking about Emily and Lorelai, but I love how the three Gilmores, how the relationship did act, because in A Year in Life, we see Rory and Lorelai. Yeah, they've had a fight before, like in season 6 when Rory didn't go to school. But I felt like for Rory, that was more her taking a stand of, hey, you did what you wanted to do, and now I'm trying to do what I want to do, and you won't let me, so I'm going to back away from you because I need to do this. And I think too that with Lorelai, like Lorelai has always encouraged Rory to do what she wants to do. And then all of a sudden when Rory, I just had a revelation. When Rory moved to college, we were just talking about how Lorelai for the first time was an adult and was becoming mature. And then she started to try to be a mom because she understood being an adult for the first time. So when Rory was like, I'm not going to go to school, she's like, no, you can't have a mind of your own right now. You're going to do what I tell you to do. And man, that doesn't work. She's in her 20s now. You can't you can't revert that now.
It's too late.
You finally got it because she finally had the opportunity to be an adult, even just for a few moments.
Yeah.
Rory needed that. She needed that. I feel like she needed that little break. I mean, she's been the mature one and the strong-headed, driven since she was, I think, probably before we even met her.
Yeah.
In the first season. So
she was exhausted.
She needed that. She needed that to grow as a person. Like everybody kind of says, everybody has a wild time in their life, like a little moment just to figure out who you are. I think that I've always agreed with her. I hated them not talking.
Everybody.
I hated the fight. I mean, it just didn't feel like the show. I don't even sometimes I fast forward that part.
Skip that. Thank you.
Fast forward.
That.
I think too, in the same way that Rory realized how alike Lorelai and Emily were, I think Lorelai began to realize, okay, yep, we're all the same. And that because it was, she's going to lose momentum if she stops. She wasn't talking to Rory. She's talking about herself.
Yeah.
If that was Lorelai, she would have lost momentum and stopped. Rory had never lost momentum ever. So she needed to breathe. This was her leaving. This was Rory taking a break from Yale, was Lorelai leaving the Gilmore house. Neither one of them could breathe. Yeah. They needed to take a break. They needed to get air.
Yeah.
And I think that Lorelai didn't realize that because her 2 years apart she realized I have raised myself. So I have raised a little mini me. She is me. but she didn't look at it the right way. Because
Mhm.
I think if she would have allowed Rory to stay at home and, you know, coached her, helped watch over her, help her make decisions, I think Rory probably would have gone back to Yale sooner than the cushy life at Grandma and Grandpa's in the pool house.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
of course, that's conjecture, and these aren't real people. So, I mean,
You
they were
know,
written
What?
exactly how they're supposed to behave. So, I mean, to me, they're real. They've been a part of my life for 21 years. They are real to me. But the other aspect too, in A Year in the Life, that I thought was really nice is when Rory had asked Lorelai about the book, which I don't know why. I think it's because I would make the same decision Lorelai did. I felt that Lorelai really overreacted to that, first of all. But
That's Lorelai.
yeah, it's true. But the fact that she that story that she said where what did she leave her in a bucket? Is that what it was?
Like she
left
bathed her
Rory
in
in
a
a hardware store.
Yep, that's what it
Hardware
was. Yep.
store.
yeah.
Yeah.
There
A
was something
hardware store. It was destined. It was Williams Hardware. We knew it, but no, I'm kidding.
there was something about a bucket too, but I can't remember
Well,
exactly.
that's what it was. Yeah, she left her in a bucket in a hardware store.
In the bucket. She left her in the
Oh,
bucket.
okay.
And how she's saying, you know, I thought that was a fake story at first, but then Rory was like, but that happened. So I thought it was fake. But my point there is that Lorelai, as the adult that she is, as you know, living with Luke now for 10 years, I have to assume since the end of season 7, they've been living together. So for 10 years, they've been living together. Lorelai has fully become an adult, because I think once you're an adult and you have that time on your own, I don't think it takes that long. So we have 3 years where Lorelai, oh my gosh, Lorelai,
Lorelai,
they're both named Lorelai either.
Lorelai.
She had 3 years to live fully on her own, except for that madness when she was with Chris. And so she had this opportunity to be an adult, to find responsibility, to mature. And she was in a healthy relationship with Luke, although she was still calling all the shots. And so for Rory to come up and say, hey, this is what I want to do, and for her to say no, at the same time that her and her mom are sort of reconciling, it's a really, really beautiful twist on the original series. Because when it was Rory and Lorelai talking in the original series, Rory ran to Grandma and they were close. And in The Year in the Life, when they stopped talking because Lorelai made the decision, Lorelai and Emily got closer. So it was a really nice twist to see them come, the 3 Gilmores come full circle. And I thought that was really beautifully done. And I loved Lorelai's response to the book. I'll read it when it's finished, and then gave her advice on the title. I think the last thing we need to talk about before we jump off is just their relationship when Rory was in college, because that's the last part of it. And we've talked a lot about our youth. We've talked a lot about Lorelai, but we haven't talked about the relationship in college. So I just want to touch on that. And then I think that we are probably done talking about Lorelai and Rory.
Are we ever going to be done talking about Lorelai?
That's why we're going to do
No.
several more Gilmore episodes. But I think like when she goes to college that first night is the first time you see Rory actually behaving like a daughter and Lorelai behaving like a mother. And that right there.
Wow. Josh is like,
there's no other word attached to mother. It just ends at mother.
Like,
No.
drop the mic, walk away.
Yes.
But I think that scene is something that as the years have gone on, I've said, you know, my perception has changed, but that scene has never been different for me. Since I watched that is a moment I want to have with my daughters, because it's truly Lorelai being a mother, caring for her daughter above herself. Yes, it's funny with the truck. Well, then you take the mattress. Well, then it comes with the truck. Well, then no, you take the like that's funny and everything.
I've seen that tree.
Exactly. Yeah. I say that. I use that line all the time, by the way. We've been here before. I recognize that tree when my husband says something. Like, what are you doing right now? It's a bit. Never mind. But
go with the bit. You should know that.
It's Gilmore Girls. You wouldn't understand.
Exactly. No, my husband loves that show. Like I told him that we were trying to get Scott Patterson on here, and he's like, "Well, can I sit in on that one?" So he loves it. But I think that there, when she's first at college for the first time, she reaches out to her mom in real need. And I think the reason that Lorelai becomes a mom in that moment, or is acting like a mom in that moment, is because she's responding to the need of her daughter. Rory has been so independent for so long. I don't think Lorelai realized how much she wanted her to need her until that moment when Rory genuinely needed her, and Lorelai jumped like that. As a mother would, any mother would. But that's why that scene resonates with me so much. And that's why I've never felt differently about that scene, because it seems like they finally have the right relationship.
Right. So
Yeah.
many good things that came out of those first few episodes of you know, getting into college, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like there's so many different, aspects. And you're right. You get to see that, part of Lorelai being her mother. But at the same time, too, it was that nice balance because
Yep.
it's like, okay, we're going to order one of everything from all the different places. You
I'm
know
doing
what
that
I mean?
with my
It's
daughter,
like,
by the way.
and, and, and
That's
then
important research, by the way. I
it
mean,
was so meticulous. The system, it was like awe-inspiring. It was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is great. She's gonna you run a Fortune 500 company this way, It's like,
It's all like this, like what they're gonna learn. That's gonna be the best thing they learned in their senior year. I mean, their freshman year of college.
Yes. How to Lorelai places. That's important.
How to Lorelai.
but and it's funny because around the house we talk about it a lot too, because it's like, I'm in college, but I need my mommy. And it's like,
That's our favorite.
I know, it's like I need my mommy.
In our last Gilmore episode, I think both Beth and I had a version of that on our top 10.
Nice.
Yes, we
Great.
did. I think it was my number one. Yeah, definitely.
It was my number one.
Yeah.
Was it your number one too?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because I'm a mom of daughters, and I want that moment with my daughters. Each and every one of them. I will Lorelai places with all three of my kids.
Aww.
My husband
I
said
love
they all have to go to the same school because we can't live in 3 different cities. So
There you go.
it'll be easy.
There you go. So you just Lorelai it and
Exactly. But then as she's getting older in the school, she is coming to Lorelai more, and Lorelai gets to play the part of mother in a way that I think she's always sort of wanted to play it. Because when even when Rory comes to her about Logan of, I just want you to know, I told you I'd let you know when things are going to get started, and I just want you to let you know they have. And Lorelai responds of, oh, okay, they started. Okay. And so like she's able to be mother and friend now, where I don't think she thought she could before, because I think in her mind it was always, if I play mom card, she's gonna run.
Right.
And now Rory's not gonna run because Lori's already on her own. So it's I get to play mom a little bit better now. I'm mature enough now that because I've been living on my own, so I understand the intricacies of being an adult more, and I have things I can teach you. And so I really love the progression. The college years are my favorite years. Don't get me wrong, I love the high school years, but the college are my favorite because the relationship feels more balanced and it feels more on the level it should be. And it's a nice way to see them both grow.
Absolutely.
I agree. I like the college years a lot more than I do the high school years.
And it's not just because
But
Logan's in it.
also, I'm a Logan fan, so.
Well, yeah, see, that's the reason I don't like the company,
But I'm also a Jess fan. I'm one of those rare people that I am
Mhm.
Switzerland on them.
I don't like high school Jess.
No.
I
don't
like
think you're
college
supposed
Jess.
to like.
I don't think you're right. I don't think you're supposed
Yeah.
to like high school
You're
Jess.
not.
I like
I-
season 6, Jess. I
I
love
liked high school Jess too. I can't. No.
I can't wait
I
to
like
talk
them.
Rory's relationships. I cannot wait to have the Jess Rory discussion and the Jess Logan discussion. I'm so
Oh no.
So many things to say.
I have a
might have
lot
to
of things.
Part episode.
We probably need to do one episode per.
Oh, we're doing
One
that.
guy.
episode per- Yeah, I
Oh,
think
boy.
so. One
Unless
episode
people
per
want to
week.
listen to us talk for 4 hours in a row, I think, we're going to have to separate it out.
Right.
So is there anything else anybody wants to say about Lorelai and Rory's relationship?
I think just with all its complexities and all of obviously all the negative aspects that we mentioned, and of course there's so many positive aspects, it's just so iconic. They are the Gilmore girls, and it's
Mhm.
just so iconic, and it's wonderful that for so many years, like you said, Maureen, for 21 years they've been your friends, your family, and yet others that have just recently introduced to the show or just now getting introduced to the show, it's just so cool to see that those characters and the complexity of it, and they are the Gilmore girls, as I said.
Yeah.
100%.
No, I agree. Yeah, it just shows how complex a relationship like that is. That mother-daughter. It's perfectly imperfect. And
Right.
that's what makes the show
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah, and that really
Go ahead.
I know we haven't talked about Lorelai and Emily. That's probably a completely different episode of this, but I mean they have a very, very complicated relationship, and I can't wait to dive into that one.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's the whole theme of the show is, relationships, and they're not all surface level. They're complicated.
Yep.
Very much so.
Absolutely. But most of all, I think to see that the love that they all share, because to see, Lorelai would stop at nothing to help Rory, that she has that fierce kind of mother's love for Rory. And of course, Rory, to see her even as a mature child, there was aspects of her that she always felt like she was just Lorelai's baby the whole time, and not in a negative way, but in a positive way. It was cool to see that, it was a mama bird and a baby bird, and no matter how old each one is going to get, it was always going to be that feeling of it, that even with all of her, things that she could have done differently and should have done differently, to see that fierce love come from Lorelai to Rory. It's that's so awesome to see that, and I know even my mom likes to watch Gilmore Girls, because any show that shows like a parent or a mother, and obviously this has so many mothers with Emily and Lorelai, and then later on even Sookie becomes a mom, and you get to see those themes reflected in her too. And so I think she was able to connect on that, because there's so many things that, Lorelai should have done differently, but to see that just kind of conquered all of it, to see Rory and Lorelai just thrive in that aspect. So that's pretty cool, to be able to see that.
For sure. And I think too, I just want to reiterate, we love these women.
Yeah.
We love this show. Is everything that
Yes.
we've said about them is not like, oh, they suck because they are so immature and they weren't mother enough. None of that means that. I mean, if that were the case, I wouldn't be watching it for 21 years every single year.
And we wouldn't be sitting here talking about them.
No.
You're
So-
beyond attached with these people. That's why
Exactly.
Anything negative is basically just a group of family and friends like causing an intervention for characters that existed 20 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think
It's just
too that-
showing our character love for them.
yeah. And I think that because we can recognize these things in them, we relate to it well because we recognize it in us. And that's why we're so attached. And I think we've hit on that several times in this podcast, that they are relatable, that they are human, that they are basically us. And that's why this show is so huge. And that's why this fan base is so enormous, because the writing is great. The acting is great. The characters, as much as we can point out their flaws, that does not make them not great. It makes them human. And that's the best part about the show, is they have made these characters human rather than just fake people on a screen. They have become human to us. They become real people to us. And that's why, because they are so imperfect, because they have so many issues, because they have so many flaws, as well as they have so many positives. They have so many benefits to their characters, and they have so many good things about their characters.
Absolutely. They're human, like you said, and it makes them great.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I don't think that even covers Lorelai and Rory even halfway.
We can do a whole season on them.
We've got to find a way to stop those. So I think that we're going to put a cap on this for tonight. We don't know what's coming up next. Well, everyone else might, but I don't know what's coming up next, because if you've been watching this podcast for the last couple of weeks, you know that we have slammed 15 episodes in the recording for the last 2 weeks before we go on a 2-week vacation. So you guys are going to be getting pre-recorded stuff, pre-edited stuff over the next 2 weeks. So I have no idea which end is up as it comes to our podcast and what order they're coming in. So watch next week, tune in next week on Sunday and on Wednesday to find some awesome stuff, some awesome material. If you want to reach out, yeah, exactly. If you want to reach out to us, our email is familyfanclub2021@gmail.com. You can find our Gilmore group on Facebook under Gilmore Girls, Gilmore Family Fan Club. That is a Facebook group. And you can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. I always want to say Instagram and social media, but you can find us on Instagram and Twitter under basically the same name, Family Fan Clubs. Some version of that will pop up. And those are all ways you can contact us if you want to know more about what we do, you want to know more about our groups, if you want to get involved in our groups, if you want to give us questions or ideas for the podcast. We welcome all of that, because, we're all fans here. We may be running the podcast, we may be talking at you, but we are all just fans exactly like you. We want you to be as much part of this as we are. So, let us know what you think. And remember that rating us, liking us, sharing our podcast, and getting others to listen helps us to bring you better content. The more of those things we get, the higher our numbers go, the higher our subscriptions and our rates go, the more we're seen. So that means the more cast and crew we can get you interviews with. So remember to do that. We'd love to give you exactly what you want. So reach out to us and keep watching. So we will see you guys in a week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.